Welcome to the Top Business Leaders Podcast. You'll learn how successful people just like you have grown their businesses, expanded their influence, and made money by writing a book. On each episode, you'll learn the inside secrets to help you create a book that can serve as a powerful marketing tool to skyrocket your business. I'm your host, Dan Janal. I help thought leaders, business executives, and entrepreneurs write their books. To find out more and to download our show notes, go to topbusinessleaders.com.
Welcome, everyone. This is Dan Janal, your book coach, and I'm delighted to welcome Noah St. John to be our guest today. Noah has written more than 15 books and is very well known in the self-development space. Noah, welcome. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your story?
Sure, Dan. Well, great to see you and great to be here on the show. I'm always delighted to see you and see everything that you're doing. And thanks again for having me today. Well, gosh, as you said, I've been doing this a long time. I started in my college dorm room in 1997 with $800 to my name and a book on how to do HTML. So I've been doing this a long, long time. And, it all started because I grew up poor in a rich neighborhood. And I know that's a total cliche, but I grew up in a little town called Kennebunkport, Maine, which is one of the wealthiest communities in New England. But my family was dirt poor, and I mean that literally. We lived at the bottom of a dirt road in a drafty, unfinished house that my parents ended up losing to foreclosure. So from a very young age, I was painfully aware of the dichotomy between the haves and the have-nots. The haves was everyone else in the community. The have-nots was my family. And I just hated that life of poverty and fear and lack and not enoughness. So I just vowed to have a better life, but I didn't know how to do it. So I did the only thing that I knew how to do, which was I went to the library and I started reading books. All the self-help classics, Dale Carnegie, Napoleon Hill, and I really tried to apply them, but I couldn't seem to make it work. And that's why at the age of 25, I decided to commit suicide. I was done. I was very frustrated. Anybody who's out there who knows that, if you work really hard at something and you struggle and sacrifice and you don't have success, that's called frustration. If you work hard and sacrifice and have success, that's called you feel good about it. You're like, oh, I won, that's triumph. Well, unfortunately, I only had the frustration. So decided to commit suicide. At the very last minute, my life was spared, and I didn't know why. And so I still didn't know why I was here on the earth. But I made a decision to devote the rest of my life to serving God and serving humanity while I was still here on the earth. But I still didn't know why I was here. So it took me another 5 years, and then I went on more of a spiritual journey of why we're here. What's my purpose? And I started reading the deep spiritual thinkers, Ernest Holmes and Marianne Williamson, Louise Hay, the spiritual thinkers of our time. And then in 1997, I had two epiphanies that changed my life when the first thing I discovered was my teaching or method of Afformations, which is how to change your brain using empowering questions. And then the second epiphany that I had also in that year was something that I discovered called success anorexia, which is why so many smart, creative, talented people hold themselves back from the level of success that they're perfectly capable of, and it wasn't being taught properly in the traditional success literature that was out there. So at that time, I wrote my first book. It was entitled Permission to Succeed. When I say I wrote my book, I literally sat down at my Apple computer and I just sort of downloaded it from the universe. It was just like very much of an organic experience. And I literally didn't know what to do, and I didn't have any money. Remember, this was 1997, long before Kindle and all the print-on-demand stuff that, of course, you teach your clients and that we all know today. None of that, of course, was around back then. And so I didn't have any money, so I just went down to the local print shop, copy store, and I said, how do you print a book? And they said, well, you can do it like this. I go, well, I don't have any money. And they go, well, you can do it it's tape bound. And I said, what's that? They said, bound with a piece of tape bound. I said, okay. So I just printed up 50 books or whatever I could afford. And then I started going around to local bookstores. And yes, that is in the days when there were still bookstores around. And they, I guess, took pity on me because it was the ugliest book you've ever seen. And because I didn't know anything about covers or anything like that. But anyway, long story short, I was selling books and I put up the ugliest website. So now I've got the ugliest website you've ever seen, the ugliest book you've ever seen. But people were buying it and they were loving it. They just got amazing results. And then I happened to meet a man named Jack Canfield. Of course, we all know and love Jack Canfield. This was 10 years before The Secret, but of course he was still very well known for Chicken Soup for the Soul. He was winning an award at a college, and I happened to be 10 minutes from that school, and I knew somebody there. So I was introduced to Jack Canfield, and he was very gracious, great, amazing man. And he looked at my book, remember, this is the ugliest book you've ever seen, but he just really liked it. He says, yeah, this looks great. I'll send it to my publisher. And 8 weeks later, I got a contract from the Chicken Soup for the Soul publisher. They said, we want to publish your book. So that's really how it all started.
Wow, that's amazing to get a contact like that and to get into success right off the bat. What has the book done for you professionally? How has the book helped you?
Well, the first book, I did everything wrong. I literally did everything wrong because, of course, as we know in business or marketing, one of the biggest problems that will hurt you and cost you is you don't know what you don't know. And that was the thing for me. I didn't know what I didn't know. And of course, here was my timeline. Here's how I thought it worked, Dan. I said, well, let's see. My book will come out in week 1. I'll be on Oprah week 2, and I'll be a millionaire in week 3. That was my business plan right there.
Yeah. Folks, that doesn't work that way.
And it didn't work for me because that didn't happen. Believe me, that did not happen by any stretch. I just had absolutely no idea what to do, and so but I'm like, this message needs to be heard. I knew it was a message that, if it affected me that deeply, I knew there were millions of people like me out there who were unknowingly, unwittingly, unconsciously stopping themselves from the level of success they were capable of. So, Ralph Waldo Emerson had a great quote that I love. He said, what is most personal is most universal. So it's very personal to me, but I knew it was universal to the world. And so, so I'm like, what do I do now? I have this book, and I'm like, what do I do? So the point of what I'm getting at, or one of the points is, I did everything backwards. I did everything wrong because you're supposed to have what publishers now today call a platform, which I know, of course, you teach your clients that as well. Develop a platform, and I work with my coaching clients on that too, is helping them develop a platform. Well, what is a platform? Well, a platform is how you reach people. I didn't know what a platform was. Never heard of it. I thought a platform was something you dove off of. I don't know what a platform is. So anyway, I was literally just running around and trying to do all these bookstores. Again, this was when there were bookstores, book signings, but it was a total failure. I mean, I would sell 1 or 2 or 3 books at a time. It was just awful. And of course, nobody knew who I was. So it was really, really hard. It was really awful, and just very, very frustrating. Those first several years I would cry myself to sleep a lot every night, and because I'm like, I've got this message, and I would say to God, you gave me this message, but you didn't tell me what to do to get it out there. So that's when I started realizing, well, I've got to invest in myself. I've got to invest in coaching, or I've got to figure out how to do marketing, because I didn't know anything about marketing. I was I'd done all these different jobs, and I was a janitor, I was a housekeeper, I was a secretary. I even at one time I was a professional ballet dancer. So everything that you can do to not make money, that's what I did. And so I had absolutely no idea what to do. Anyway, so long story short, I as money would come in, every little penny that would come in, I just reinvested back in my own education. I would just, okay, what do I do? How do I get my word out? And it was just a long, long process. And in fact, that's where I met you, because of course I was looking at, PR things and how to get your message out. And that's how I first heard about Dan Janal and PR leads. And that's why we've known each other for this long, almost 20 years, I guess. And so, that was what it was. It was just a long, long period for me of self-learning, self-education. And now, of course, that I'm doing better, but it's still, continuous education is still so important, and of course that's, you and I both agree on that, and that's so important.
So what turned it around for you? How did the book go to making money for you?
Well, Permission to Succeed never really turned around. It wasn't until my later books that really I started to figure it out. So Permission to Succeed, those of you who have either heard of it or have it. In fact, I've had people at my seminars. We have these 2-day seminars called Freedom Lifestyle Experience, and I've actually had people come up to me with that original book. I mean, there were only maybe 1,000 copies of that sold. I don't have the actual numbers, but I mean, I've had people with that ugly book and say, no, this book changed my life more than 20 years ago, which is incredible. And of course, for everyone listening, you know that one of the big reasons, or if not the reason that you do this, is to change lives, is to have an impact, is to transform people all around the world. So when people come up to me with that, it's really amazing, and it's, touching. So really, it didn't turn around. That book never really became very successful.
But yet you still decided to write more books.
Oh, yeah.
Why?
Well, I'm a nerd, Dan. I freaking love books. And there's plenty of people out there that say, yeah, you can't make any money in books, and books are dead or whatever. And I'm like, okay. I get their argument. I understand what they're saying. And, hey, everybody knows a book is, what, $20. Are you going to get rich selling books? Not really. Not unless your name's Stephen King or John Grisham or J.K. Rowling. I mean, you don't really get rich from selling books. But what I didn't know back then and what I have learned in the intervening years is, okay, well, what else would people want from me? And for you listener, everybody, what do people want from you? Well, they want help. They want, transformation. And so I realized, again, this took me years to realize that a book isn't enough. A book is a great, great starting point. But I have to have more than the book. So the book for me still, and I mean, I'm like you just said, my new book is coming out later, and I've got, books out. I just like books. I love them. I freaking love books because I grew up in the library. And for me, they were a way to escape from that life of poverty and fear and not enoughness. So I just love books. So am I weird? Yes.
Okay. Tell us a little bit more about how you built your platform.
Okay. So the platform is so important. So one of the things I did right, I didn't do much right in those years, but one of the things I did do right was I started to collect emails. Collect emails to build my email list. And so, to me, of course, nowadays, if we fast forward, to now, of course, we have all the social media platforms and everything like that. Here's how I look at it, and I don't think I'm alone in this, is that you look at it, the way that I see it is rent versus buy, or I should say rent versus own, right? So if let's say you're on Facebook, Instagram, whatever, social media, LinkedIn, whatever, they're all great, they're all wonderful, but you're renting space there. Right? You don't own Facebook. Your name probably, if it's not Mark Zuckerberg, your name, you probably don't own Facebook. You probably don't own LinkedIn, right? So you're renting space. Of course, it's free. Why? Because we're the product, right? Every one of us, the 2 billion people on Facebook, we are the product. That's why it's free, right? And that's why we get ads shown to us. So you're renting space. But guess what? When you rent, what happens? I'll give you a quick example of what I'm saying, a quick story. My parents, I told you were, poor and struggling, and, so we always rented. They could never afford to own a home. So I remember one day, I'll never forget this, one day I was getting ready for school in the morning, and I came downstairs, and my mom was crying in the kitchen. And I said, "What's wrong, Mom?" And she said, "We just got kicked out of this house." And I said, "What do you mean we got kicked out of the house?" I didn't understand about rent, as a kid in high school. She said, "Well, we're renting this home, and the landlord just said that we have 30 days and we have to move out." Now, that was very devastating for our family, and anybody that's been through that knows that, it's really heartrending. And so I never forgot that. I'm like, okay, but see, that's what it's like on Facebook, Instagram. They're all wonderful, but you can get kicked off at any time. You just can. If you do something that, Facebook says is not okay, then they can kick you off.
Or even now, Facebook only shows a small portion of your content to people who actually do follow you and want to see your content.
Tiny, less than 6% is the numbers that I've seen. So the point, again, is that you have to own your platform. So again, for most of us, that's an email list, certainly. Facebook has these different bots and, Messenger and all that. That's all fine, and I do it, and I recommend it. But you know what? It's really all about your list, what you control. And that's what I've been doing since, pretty much since 1998 or 9, when I really started figuring. Of course, it was tiny list at the beginning, but, it grew over time. The point is, you always have to be giving value to your target market, and you just got to be making sure that you are always relevant to them. What are their needs, wants, fears, frustrations, desires? You're always talking to them and feeding those and helping them, and then, of course, you make offers. And that's how you can leverage your book to not only make more money, but transform more lives.
Right. In my seminars, I always teach people that the only reason someone reads a book is to solve a problem. And in your case, it's the transformational problem, how to become a better person, how to overcome other beliefs and such like that. So you have so much content. And one of the questions that I always get asked on my Ask Me Anything calls, which I do once a month, is I have so much content, how do I decide what to write about?
Right, absolutely. Well, so like, for example, at my Freedom Lifestyle Experience, at our events, it's a 2-day event, and the reason I started doing this is exactly what you just said, because people just kept asking me these same questions over and over. How do I, but see, what makes my events different, what makes my coaching and teaching different is that I teach on inner game and outer game. Now, what I mean by that is inner game is everything that happens between your ears that you can't see directly, but it affects everything that you do. So one of the things I ask my audiences, like when I'm speaking at keynote speeches or at my events, I say, tell me one area of your life where your beliefs don't affect you. And of course, everybody kind of looks around like, and then I say, exactly. There's no place your beliefs don't affect you, right? Your health, your finances, your family life, your social life, everything, right? Your beliefs affect everything you do. So we got to fix that part. That's why, the first day is all about inner game mastery. Then second day is outer game mastery, which is because people kept asking me, Noah, how do I build my sales funnels? How do I do digital marketing? What's a lead magnet? All these same questions over and over. So now we solve that on day 2. And that's why we call it the Freedom Lifestyle Experience, because you're literally, this is how to live. What we call at my company a freedom lifestyle, meaning that's where you have the time, the energy, relationships, and money so that you can do the things you want to do. You can have that impact and you can transform lives. So you've got to be thinking about, so let's just say you're in the golf market, right? Let's use an easy example, right? Golf, right? Well, what can you talk about with golf? Well, how to putt the ball straight and so you can lower your score, how to hit a drive further and straighter, and so you're not always hitting out of the rough. That's the thing. There are so many things that you can do, but you've got to always put yourself. See, I obsess about my customers. I'm literally obsessed. That's why I love it when people come up to me, at my keynote speeches or at my events, and they say, Noah, how did you know so much about me? How did you know all this? It's like you've been following me around. It's like you've been reading my mail. I've literally had people say that. How did you get my mail? How did you get my diary? I've had people say. And I realize it's because I'm always thinking about you. Not you specifically, but all of my people, I'm always thinking about them and their pains, their desires, their needs, frustration. So for me, the content is everything, because inner game mastery for me, I'm like, okay, well, your beliefs, your habits, all mindset and all those things that are inner game. But then I also want to talk to you about outer game. I also want to talk about digital marketing and all of these things. One of the things I love to say is that, see, the problem with the other marketers that are marketing trainers that they're doing is they forget that most people just don't believe in themselves. Most people don't think they can do it. So they're saying, hey, here's all this great marketing. They're shoving marketing down your throat. Now, there's nothing wrong with it. We all have to do marketing. If you're in business, you have to do marketing. But guess what? Most people don't think they can do it in the first place. Mm-hmm. So guess what? On page 1, they're already done. So we start on page 0, which is you're a human being. You're not a Vulcan and you're not an android from Star Trek, If we were talking about the Vulcans and androids, we'd have no problem. But we're talking to humans who go, oh, I probably can't do it. Oh, what if people don't listen to me? What if people make fun of me? That's what I call your head trash. That's why I've written all these books about how to get rid of your head trash, and that's how it works.
So I'm sure a lot of people are shaking their heads right now and saying, I feel that same way about when I sit down to write a book. I know I want a book, I know a book can help me, but I don't think I can do it. Right. What would you tell those people? How can they get out of their own heads?
It's funny. So it's a great question, and just to share a little behind the scenes. It's so funny because when I started coaching people, when I started having people at my live events and my platinum coaching, that was the first thing they would say to me. And I go, what are you talking about? They say, well, I don't think anybody would listen to me, or why should they listen to me? And I'm going, what? And then after a while I realized I always had the exact opposite problem of that. My problem always, why isn't everybody listening to me? What is wrong with everybody? Why aren't they listening? So I'm like, I had to go, whoa, that was totally different than most people, which is what I just said, which is I don't think I can do it. So I had to really get into that and go, oh yeah, now what would happen if I thought that? Well, I would go, all right, I have to get over that first of all. Well, how do you get over that? Well, first of all, you have to say, well, what's the purpose of your message? See, one of the big mistakes everybody makes, Dan, and I know you've seen this, is everybody wants to tell their life story. And you know what? I'm so sorry, and I mean this with love. We don't care. We don't care about your life story. You don't care about my life story. I don't care about your life story. And I mean that with love. Why don't I care? Because you, everybody listening to this program, you care about what? One thing, yourself, your family, your community. That's what you should care about. You should care about yourself and your family and their needs and wants. So the point is, we're all the same. And that's all we have to remember. But see, nobody does. Nobody remembers that. Everybody's all about me, 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 me. If you can just turn that around to, well, what am I trying to get at to help that other person or this other community? Again, golfers or yoga enthusiasts or married people, entrepreneurs, whatever your niche is. if you're constantly thinking about them and stop thinking about you, and that's why, I shared just a tiny little bit of my story earlier, but I did it for a reason, so that you know that, I'm not some guy that this was just handed to. I mean, I've been working and working and working for many, many years at this, mostly with no help, and it's been really awful most of the time. So the point is, once you get some help and you get some coaching, and you get some mentoring, then it becomes a heck of a lot easier. And that's to me the message. And that's what I think, if people just remember that, it's not about me, it's about them. And then you just don't even have that problem. That's how I see it.
Exactly. When I work with my clients and they have their memoirs or their personal stories, which they want to tell, but I always say, what is the point of the story?
Right.
So we use the Dale Carnegie formula, the magic formula, of tell the story, but you end it with, so what this means to you is,
right.
And that way people can see themselves in your story and get a takeaway that they can use and say, I'm glad I read that story, I'll remember that story forever, and it reinforces this belief or this message. And a lot of business books are written that way, especially books I write with CEOs who want to leave their 10 most important points about leadership or about management or about their legacy. It's always their company stories of, here's how I saved the company did this, and what this means for you is, and then people say, okay, now I get it, now it's important. Cool, very cool. Noah, as we wrap this up, what is one writing tip that helps you write fast and succinctly?
I'll just go back to what I said earlier, Dan. It's always about them. It's never about me. And I'll tell you a quick story about that. I had a book out called The Secret Code of Success. That was published by HarperCollins. That was my first six-figure book deal, which I was really amazed and very excited about. And the first figure was not a one. I was like, yay! So it was very, very exciting. And in that book, I really didn't talk about me that much, because I never, ever wanted this to be about me. Well, then my next book after that was a book called The Book of Afformations, which is published by Hay House. Of course, we all know Hay House, and I wanted to be a Hay House author from the time in the 90s when I was reading Louise Hay books. So, that was one of my dreams. So, literally, I had 2 dreams come true. It was very, very exciting. Well, in that book, Reed Tracy, who is the CEO of Hay House, a brilliant, brilliant, brilliant guy, he said, Noah, we need to have your story in here. I said, why? He goes, because people want to know your story. I'm like, no, they don't. And he said, no, they do. Yes. Noah, you got to put your story in here. Because, I just, we'd be over dinner or lunch or whatever, and I'd be, sharing stories like I just shared with you. And that's when he said, no, you got to share your story. And I'm like, but I don't want it to be about me. He goes, no, it's not about you, but they've got to be able to understand that, you, like I was sharing, you didn't come from a silver spoon in your mouth or whatever. And they have to understand your struggles and what you've been through. I'm like, really? Would anybody care? And then, of course, now everybody comes up to me and said, no, wow, your story really changed my life. So that the tip from me is always make it about them, but you are the person saying it. You're the vehicle. You're the transformer, if you will. And so, but do make it about, here's what this means for you.
Exactly. When I work with my clients, they say the exact same thing because they don't want to appear egotistical, or they have this false belief that talking about themselves would make them appear high and mighty. But in reality, we get to know, like, and trust people that way. In fact, one of my clients who I worked with said exactly the same thing. I don't tell stories. I don't know how to tell a story. Stories are not me. I said, I used the Tony Robbins technique, and I said, but if you could tell a story, what story would you tell? And then he told a story about how when he was the head of publicity for Scholastic Books, and his bosses said, hey, we just bought the rights to these books in England. They're selling really, really well, and we have to do this media tour, and you have to train your people to do this media tour for this woman named J.K. Rowling and this Harry Potter thing. Now, he could have taken that for himself. He could have said, this is going to be big, I can make my career off this. But instead, he mentored one of his proteges, and she went around the country with J.K. Rowling, and now is J.K. Rowling's best friend and runs one of her foundations. And you can see that Alan is a very caring, giving mentor who is just a wonderful person because of this story. Well, that story became the foreword to his book.
Love it.
And now we can take all of his other rest of the book, which is more scientific, a little duller, a little drier, because it needed stories. And as his developmental editor, I said, you need more stories. That's why we got onto this. And it turns out that was the linchpin to turn his book from being like a dry tome to being like a big business card where it says, I want to work with this guy because he's so giving and caring. Now, as we wrap up, why don't you tell us a little bit about your current book? And I know you've mentioned your workshops and your seminars. Why don't you tell us how we can can learn more about those.
Sure, absolutely. So my most recent book is called Get Rid of Your Head Trash About Money. And that's where I teach you about how to master your inner game, like I was talking about earlier, so you can literally get rid of the head trash that's holding you back, those voices in your head that say, well, who's going to listen to me, or why I'm not good enough, or whatever it might be. You can go to sendmeabooknoah.com. Very easy to remember. Sendmeabooknoah.com. And that book is free. I've actually, because you're listening to this program, the book is free. And we just ask you to cover shipping costs. So sendmeabooknoah.com. And again, the name of the book is Get Rid of Your Head Trash About Money. And for my live events, for Freedom Lifestyle Experience, that 2-day transformational summit where I teach you how to master your inner game and your outer game, just go to freedomlifex.com. So freedomlife, L-I-F-E, and then the letter x.com/Dan. So you're going to get a special deal because you're listening to this program right now. So freedomlifex.com/Dan, D-A-N. And of course, that way I'll know that you heard it on this program. So make sure you check it out.
Thank you, Noah. That's a very generous offer. And if you weren't writing that down or couldn't write down fast enough, that's okay. We'll have that information in our show notes, along with links back to Noah's website and his other books as well.
Thanks for listening to Top Business Leaders, the only podcast that shows you exactly how people just like you have built their businesses by writing a book. If you'd like to write your book but don't know where to start, you can find great information at writeyourbookinaflash.com. Thanks again for listening. We'll be back next week with another insightful interview to help you become a top business leader.